Welcome, everybody, to this special review, this Geek News group review of the Avengers, Age of Ultron. First of all, I am your host, Adam Mickelson, and again, if people hadn't noticed by now, there is no episode tonight. There will not be one, because we're getting together for more Gaming with the Geeks. And we obviously have our panel here. We have Alex the Shadow Blazer.
Hello.
Very much in the light. It doesn't burn you, does it?
No, it does not.
It burns. And then we have Stephen Romney of Romney's Reviews and Studio Phantasma.
Technically Studio Ghosted for the sake of U.S. copyright law.
Yes. Because YouTube.
And Germany.
And then we also have Aldo Gomez of
Germans
Reviews
again.
vs. the World, of Board Offline, of Anime Overdub ES.
King of the Raccoons.
King of the Raccoons.
The raccoons.
If we could copyright Raccoon Man, we would.
Didn't
Hey,
South
someone
Park do
tried
that
to
already?
copyright candy.
No, that was just the coon, though.
The coon, though.
The King. No, actually, somebody did ask at one point a silly question of, we know why Aldo's gone. He's been trying to audition for the next Batman movie. I'm like, that would be funny having Aldo doing the Christian Bale Batman voice.
I try to pitch them that he needs another vermin-oriented sidekick, and
Yes.
what better than a young Hispanic youth called the Raccoon.
The
To
King.
which they told me to go away because I still have a restraining order.
That's why you need to stop stalking Jeff Loeb and go to some of the other editors.
I know, but Jeff Johns
I've heard
doesn't...
Avi Arad is really easy to approach.
Yeah, but that's only if you want to get with Marvel and Sony.
Rocket Raccoon? Did you use a sidecat?
Called the Raccoon, who's just another young Hispanic youth.
And he doesn't ever get the joke that he's referencing raccoons.
Well, then again, Sony is making the Sly Cooper movie. You might have a better shot with that.
Sold.
Who would be your Bentley and who would be your Murray?
Pretty sure that's you guys.
Well, Fly, we can get into this building.
No, I think you got it backwards.
So, all right, into Avengers: Age of Ultron. So, if I'm sure Romney will go into some of the plot in his own review.
Well, actually, I've made it clear on my channel, I'm not actually going to have a review on my channel this time.
Oh, really? We've gone into the plot, so we're not going to go into too much. We're more going to encourage people to go see Age of Ultron. Really, what I want to try and have this review focus on is the changes between the characters, or the evolution between Avengers 1 to Avengers 2. Obviously, the new characters we have. I would like to bring up, because people have asked, the comparison between the two Quicksilvers. And then also, here's the bigger question that I want you all to be considering. Alex is, when Alex saw the Avengers, he had seen not that many Wave 1 movies. When he saw Avengers 2, again, he had not seen that many Wave 2 movies.
Yes.
You felt confused.
A little
bit. So that's kind of the overall question of, do you need to see the expanded stuff in order to understand it completely, or can you still get the premise of Avengers Age of Ultron? So those are going to be kind of the focus that I want to stay on. First of all, the one thing I want to go into is likes and dislikes with it. So, Aldo, you've seen this twice now.
Yes, I have.
What are your likes and dislikes about Age of Ultron?
Everything and everything. No. No, so I love it. This is, I would probably put this as my number 2 favorite Avengers movie so far. With number 1 probably still being Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is how unembarrassingly, or how just proud it is that it is a comic book movie.
Yes.
Just throwing references everywhere. There's, Romney and I were I was looking it up. Romney just had to suffer by sitting next to me. We're looking up about the new voice for Tony Stark's AI.
Friday, yeah.
And that in of itself is a reference. That, along with the other chips that he holds in his hand, are a reference. There's just kind of references everywhere, and I kind of love it because I am like an Easter egg hunter. I do love that type of stuff. I do like how quick it was to go.
Yeah.
That is my one complaint about the Avengers 1 movie, is how it takes 40 minutes to reintroduce you to all the characters. This one just says, if you haven't seen them, you should probably not watch this movie.
Well, not only that, but they also took the comic book references and also kind of threw in the Joss Whedon-esque humor to them. So there was a lot of points where, like, you could totally see this line being said in the comic book,
Yeah.
and Whedon adds his own little spin to it.
And there's stuff that I don't like with it, specifically it being a Whedon movie, and it's a spoiler, but you're gonna have that one character, he appears on screen, you instantly love him, and you're like,
And he
well,
has to die.
crap. This is a Whedon movie.
Yeah, keep it, because we're not going to talk the plot here, and this is why we're encouraging you to see Age of Ultron. We're going to talk spoilers here.
Yeah.
So that's part of analyzing the movie. Please go see this. You guys will not be
Spoiler
disappointed.
warning. Spoiler warning. Hoot, hoot. See the movie first. Spoiler warning.
You have been warned. Go see the movie. We'll wait.
Yeah. Out of the stuff I didn't, I guess.
Yeah, we look at our wrists when we have no watches.
Out of the stuff I didn't like, once again, I kind of don't like the fact that it's a super comic book movie. I feel that it alienates, like, a general audience, because the point of the Avengers movies, as opposed to, like, in my mind, is that you're supposed to go watch the Avengers movie, and that's supposed to go inspire you to go out and buy 12 DVDs of the other Avengers movies.
As well as a bunch of trade of backs of the comics.
Yeah, it's a bunch of bags and watch the miniseries, put up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I feel like with this one, there's so many references, so many things, that if you're sitting next to somebody like me and they're like, Wakanda! And I'm like, yeah!
Yes!
And some normal person next to me is going to be like, the craps of Wakanda.
Exactly. And the fact that, where a comic book fan knows that reference,
Yeah.
a general audience person is like, why do I care about that?
Yeah.
They didn't, like, the comic book fans saw that as a subtle hinting towards Phase 3.
I don't even think there's a subtle hint. I think it's just a slap
Well,
in
yeah,
the
we
face.
just saw it as Phase 3, and
Yeah.
everybody else went, what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's basically about as subtle as a trout to the face.
Yeah, and everybody for them. I think normal audiences for that moment were Bruce Banner for that moment.
Yeah.
But I kind of I love that. The other things I don't like is just like, there were moments when it feels overstuffed, and I feel like this is expanding the universe at such an exponential rate that it's gonna force people to have to watch everything in between. Mm-hmm. You can't. I think after this point, you can't pick and choose anymore. You kind of have to be on board for the whole ride in order to understand the movie.
Which is kind of the inevitability of these comic book films.
And that's kind of the problem that I even had with it as well going in, is just the fact that it's getting to the point where you have to have been following every single movie.
Yeah.
And it would be better if they at least varied up the overall style of each film, actually gave them a unique feel. Mm-hmm. But given that they're basically making all these Marvel movies and they're basically following the same basic style, it bothers me a little bit. And that's why I was that's why I'm worried about Ant-Man, because, I mean, when Edgar Wright was at the helm, we probably would have had the chance of something that would have been unique and separate. But then Disney and a lot of people, it was Marvel. No, I'm guessing it was Disney. They had problems with the script.
Well, and in turn, also, the other thing that I heard that was going to come with the Age of Ultron DVD, I don't think it's coming anymore, was they were actually going to do a catch-up guide. Mm-hmm. And they were going to show the Phase 2 movies just in case you hadn't seen them. Not show them, but show the pivotal points. And I've heard many reasons. I've heard Whedon threw that out. I've heard Disney then decided against it. And ultimately, that's kind of the problem that you're running into, is some of these comics that have huge continuities. Now the Marvel Cinematic Universe is starting to have a huge continuity. I mean, mm-hmm. we're 3 Iron Man movies. We have 2 Thor movies. We have 2 Captain America. We have a Hulk movie that can be referenced and one that really can't. We have Guardians of the Galaxy. It's becoming an expanded.
Complex.
It's becoming complex. So
and the thing is, like, kind of like Alex say for example, somebody hasn't seen, let's just say for example, they haven't seen Guardians and they haven't seen Iron Man 3, and all you saw was Captain America. You're still all right entering.
Yeah, like if you saw Winter Soldier, I think that if you at least saw Winter Soldier, you'd be fine. You don't necessarily need to see Guardians, although there's some illusion.
So that's kind of what I'm getting to, is that if you didn't see either of those movies and all you saw was Winter Soldier, you went into Avengers 2, for the most part, you're fine. You're kind of missing a few things, like when they show the purple Infinity Stone, somebody might have been like, oh, what? That was 3.
Or all the Infinity
whatever.
Gems to some extent.
Exactly. And so the thing is, by the time we get to Infinity War Part 1 and 2, if you didn't see either of the Guardians movies, you're just going to be completely, wait a minute, why are there 5 people and what's the deal with the rocking raccoon in the tree?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, I agree with that. That could be the greatest like of this movie, and that could also be its greatest downfall. So for my likes and dislikes, one of the things I will compliment these movies for, and I've spoken against the Transformers movies on these, which is the fight scenes are always good in these movies, and the reason that they are good is, and I think Spoonie put it the best way, they are not giant rolling balls of gray. You know distinctive colors in the fights, and therefore can distinguish them. So if you see that flash of green, you know it's Hulk that's coming into frame.
By the way, hey, DC, you can make movies that happen in the daytime with, like, actual light, where we can actually see your characters.
And that don't portray a certain hero as a god.
Well...
there were some moments like that in this film. At least, in my opinion, there were some moments where you could tell that they were almost kind of trying to give a middle finger to Man of Steel, because you see that there is a lot of destruction in this film, but you can tell they were kind of going out of the way to make sure, okay, we're going to actually show them trying to save people. We're going to actually show...
Yep.
And there was still some religious imagery.
Well, they still had that line where they're like, I see you amongst all these gods. And all
yeah, I see you amongst gods, and
yeah.
But in the end, the best part is the coupling and ending part of that line, which is, I think they need you more than ever.
Which we're talking about Hawkeye talking.
Yeah, they need a man
talking to his spoiler wife.
Spoiler.
Oh yeah. One thing I definitely do like is that they at least gave Hawkeye more to work with. He wasn't just a tag along in this film. And I especially liked how they referenced the fact that he was under mind control once. And it actually was something that he learned from, and they actually gave him more to do this.
I actually did like it. He's like, I've had that happen before. I don't like it.
I actually love the fact of how much of a spotlight they gave to Hawkeye, because in his last solo run in the comics, which is a Hawkeye, which was David Aja and I forget who the other person involved was, but they did an excellent about 24 issue run where it's just about him being him when he's not being an Avenger. Yeah. And it's very human, and so it's very nice to see them kind of keep that element where even though he's an excellent archer and everything,
sure,
they don't cheese him up like Bullseye, for example, where it was almost made to be almost superhuman and arrogant.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he's just so humbled, and the fact that he's so aware that he's just a human. When he's talking to Scarlet Witch and he's like, we're in a floating city, there's robots everywhere, and I'm a guy with a bow and an arrow. This doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so it's one of these things where he's so human, it kind of reminds you that, like, yeah, we're watching a movie about superheroes, but let's not forget that humans are still very much involved.
And it's also kind of because let's not forget that these characters are also human, that they have their fair share of drama, which is why I also like that exchange with his wife, where he was like saying, like, yeah, they're maybe gods, but they're messed up.
Yeah. So like I said, I love the distinction of the fight scenes, especially like how they tried to portray every character, and I mean, you know which hero you're going to in each scene. Like, they transition into them really, really well. Whereas, like, the Transformers films, and even to some extent, like, Man of Steel had that problem, too, where you didn't know who was who. You could distinguish between them, and I love that especially. One of the dislikes that I ended up walking away from was kind of your dislike, where it didn't feel like... I appreciate James Spader's performance of Ultron. I love it, but at the end of the day, he was just a guy who had to destroy the world. He was the typical supervillain. And where I think there would be really great ones that you want to do, you can't do them. You know, like, at that point you could say, well, Ultron, you could have juxtaposed Doctor Doom in there, but he can't be there because of Fox. So at that point, I think a lot of Ultron's character was kind of brought down because of that. But overall, I think James Spader's performance of it saves it. In the fact that it's not that he's just a robot that wants to take over the world. It's that, well, he's going to do it with style.
Well, it's not even just that. It's just it has to go down the whole corruption of the idea of wanting to save the world and all that. Yeah. Which I kind of wish they did a little bit more with. You could tell that they just kind of threw that in as a way of saying, okay, well, see, he has a clear motivation, but they never really did anything with that.
It almost felt like they're like, you've seen this before, now let's roll with it, because we have about 18 heroes we have to showcase.
Yeah. Or the other underlying theme of Ultron was there are no strings on me, because he kept on singing it.
I think that was something that they also didn't really do that much with. I mean, if they had actually had shown a moment where he was under Tony Stark's control, then that could have worked.
And here's the thing too: when they actually brought that in, it was kind of haunting that he was singing it. You know,
I think there's one scene that could have helped it, which I think would have been him. You know how we get the whole Jarvis him interaction. It's all kind of digital. We're seeing the video.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a lot more interesting to have seen his robot body encased in all like the wires and everything as he's getting repaired.
Mm-hmm.
And Jarvis you still hear that dialogue that's going on, and you actually see him break out of the restraints and break the cables off of him.
Mm-hmm.
As he walks towards the heroes, but that would have been a much different reveal.
And I think alternatively, what they should have done with even the interaction, like that initial well, I guess it wouldn't necessarily work with the initial I don't know where my brain's going with it, to be honest. I had a thought, but I lost
The
it.
other thing I would have loved to have seen for Ultron would have been more references to him being a Tony Stark product, because even though he very much comes from the stone, he does pick up, I think because of Jarvis, he does pick up on a lot of those Tony Stark things. Like when he says, keep your friends rich, your enemies rich, and you'll find out which is which. And Andy Serkis' character goes like, that's a Tony Stark thing.
Yeah, I would have loved more hatred moments where he admits that and he gets on their case.
I would have loved to see more of a result of him being, essentially a child of Tony Stark, and seeing more similarities between the two rather than just about 2 or 3 sentences worth.
Well, yeah, and especially with the whole him just freaking out because, I hate Stark. It just felt like it came out of nowhere. There was not really a good establishment of that.
So those are my likes and dislikes. Alex, you've seen this twice now.
Yeah.
So likes and dislikes of the film. Is your dislike the exact same as it was, or?
Yes, it is, but I'll get into that. I'll start with my likes, of course. And,
Okay.
What I like about this movie, it's an action movie, of course. It's a comic book movie, but it's not 2.5 hours of straight line action. This is why this movie's done a little more for me than, say, The Hobbit did back in December, where The Hobbit was 2.5 hours of just fighting.
Mm.
This was a bit more of a good character film, but as an action film still.
Yeah.
And we got all these nice little timeouts with the whole characters, and it wasn't... And the dialogue didn't even need to be overwritten for it. It was just them having a good time at a party. It was them maybe talking about what their next plan of action was, but it wasn't overwritten.
Yeah.
And a lot of the character development wasn't just them all at one table. It was them all, one-on-one interaction.
Absolutely.
I had to say I agree with your point in that you get that excellent personalization, and especially that first time where they were all attacked by Scarlet Witch. There's no lines; you just see them in the plane, and there's just you physically see them recovering from this whole thing that just happened.
Yeah, recovering from the mind fuck, basically.
Yes. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
now we have a mature content rating.
Well, someone was
We
gonna
were
say
going to have it.
We're allowed 1 F per episode.
And I don't think that works for YouTube, though.
It does now.
All right.
If it works for Wolverine, it works for me.
Aldo Gomez, changing YouTube policy because why the heck not?
That's pretty much YouTube's whole MO when you think about it, though. Changing the way things work because why not?
Because why not?
Anyways, Alex, you see you were saying.
Yeah. What else do I like about this movie? There's a lot to like about this movie. I think it's a fun roller coaster ride of a movie.
Yeah.
For as long as it is, I don't feel bored at any point, even in the slow, quiet moments. Again, it's this nice balance of you got the heavy, intense action, and there's probably like a dozen more action scenes in this movie compared to Avengers 1, and there's all these nice, quiet moments to balance it out. That's what's nice, and you guys were pretty much right on the money that everything is pretty distinct in the fight scenes. You're not getting lost in a gray mesh of CGI or blurs emotion.
In fact, they kind of evolved it where they had individual attacks last time. They had more evolution of mixing the powers. Because, if people remember in the original Avengers, the only mixing of powers they had was Iron Man using his Unibeam off of Captain America's shield and going across. In this one, we had Captain America and Thor working together. You had Black Widow and the Hulk.
Which I do have to actually, every time somebody brings that scene up, I always go that was pretty dumb because you could have just done that. On the
Yeah,
shield,
pretty
on the
much.
shield thing. It was just a stuff. No, but like, there's also
It was there because teamwork!
There's also that part towards the end where you get that really slow motion montage of everybody fighting together.
Yeah.
And you see them all fighting, working together, because you see like the witch holding up a robot and Tony flies by.
Yeah, that was pretty much like the evolved circle in the original Avengers film that was like the trailer.
The trailer.
Awesome pick.
Is 2 movies enough to call that a trope? Where we get them all in a circle and then we get an awesome fight?
I think as soon as
as
DC's got to learn, because they've got to make the Justice League look just as awesome.
If they do that in Suicide Squad, I'm calling it a trope. It is
It's a
officially established a trope at that point.
Yeah, very well.
I was going to say, Guardians didn't do it. Guardians just had them standing...
They did in the prison scene. When they were breaking out of the prison, they had the whole swoop around with Groot kind of like holding as Rocket Raccoon's like shooting.
Yeah, but it didn't like loop around and then there's Drax and then there's Corona and there's...
Gamora.
Gamora. Wow.
Corona?
Did I say Corona?
You said Corona. I'm guessing.
You're thirsty?
Yeah.
No, that was World of Warcraft character. Anyway, so they're literally the same thing as far as I'm concerned. Gamora, and then you had and Star-Lord. You didn't have that swirling moment, although if it becomes a trope, I think you'll see that.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be a swirling, because there was a team shot, like specifically at the end of Guardians, when they were
all in one line.
I think for it to be the trope, it needs to be them in the room together.
Yes. Fighting.
Working together, yes.
In the room, all shouting, "You're tearing me apart!"
Which is funny, because we expected them all... Yeah, they're tearing us apart. And they were tearing them apart. And then the other thing, too, is like... I love the fact that Joss will not let them say the line, which is what we've been waiting for in the comic book movies. We've been waiting for them to say, "Avengers Assemble," and he cuts off the film. He's like, "No, I'm not letting them."
We keep getting sopranoed.
We really do.
Still better than Lone Rangered.
Yeah. So, back to you, Alex.
Okay, should I go into my dislikes now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't like this. I don't like the story of Ultron. I don't like the story. It's overdone here. It's the usual. Oh, humans are bad. Gotta wipe out all humanity.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if you just stuck to gotta wipe out the Avengers, or maybe if considering
I want to wipe out Tony Stark.
Yes, or Tony Stark, or oh hey, my purpose is to be a peacekeeping AI, but if I achieve peace, won't that make me obsolete? Then okay, that might have been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, but we had to go this whole again cliche. Oh, humanity's bad.
Well, and I think part of the problem is that they already used up the idea of the whole peacekeeping thing in Winter Soldier with that whole satellite system.
And I think it's one of the things that makes Ultron so interesting in the comics is that a lot of the comics always revolve around Ultron actually winning, and it's always about them coming back and beating him.
Yeah.
Or it's some sort of stupid time travel thing where he's won in the future, so they have to fight him in the past,
and he's worked out an alliance with Kang the Conqueror,
and comics are weird. So yeah, I completely agree with you. At this point, it's such a beaten horse.
Yeah, see, for me, I've not read the comics, and I've only seen a handful of the other Marvel films out there. So this movie, while it is fairly kind to strangers, at the same time, it has a lot of continuity things that if you're not totally up to speed, you are going to be just a little bit lost. And I was going into this my first time just a little lost.
Yeah, because you had seen 2 of the 4 films, but you had not seen he had seen I think it was Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3.
And he went and saw Guardians with me. So
if you hadn't seen Captain
America. So he hadn't seen Thor, and he hadn't seen Captain America, which means like even in Guardians, the Infinity Gems was kind of lost to him.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm trying not to talk for Alex, but and I also kind of agree, like, it was kind of stereotypical villain, and Ultron there isn't much to do with, but I still think James Spader's performance saves that aspect.
I think Ultron works as a character, not necessarily as a villain.
Yeah, he's kind of the issue.
Him and the Vision, I love them because they're very much AI, and they were more AI than they were machine.
Yeah.
So they felt more like characters. So, I mean, you had a Vision talk very calmly, very, that type of thing. You also had Ultron do that, but he had these quirks where, he would forget words, or his just innate rage at the mention of Tony Stark, and they were more human quirks than they were machine quirks.
Yeah. it's one of those things where like you could almost use Vision and Ultron as kind of the allegories of like peace and war. Everything Vision did was very peaceful, and I think the best description that Ultron has had throughout the whole movie is rage. You know, he is just rage built in. Mm-hmm. Did you have any other dislikes you wanted to bring up, or?
I think that's pretty much it as far as my dislikes go.
Now, Romney, this is your first time for Avengers.
Yeah, this is my first and probably only showing because I didn't feel like seeing it twice, to be honest.
It's too big. I mean,
I mean, that's...
Like, going in for a second showing, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is still, like, a big mouthful.
Oh, yeah, and basically, that kind of goes into one of my dislikes, where it feels long. It is a long movie. I mean, although it had moments where I was kind of engaged, towards the end, though, you were really starting to feel its length. Yeah. Where they're just like, oh, he's attacking a city. Oh, now the city's being risen out of the ground. And they're still fighting, and,
apparently, Joss Whedon's first cut was like 3.5 hours.
Yeah. Loki was in the first cut.
Yeah, he was.
And he doesn't need to be. I mean, come on, people. There are other characters. Why the hell are you so obsessed with Loki?
Because Loki.
Yeah, but anyway,
because he's troubled, and I can change him.
That's the problem. That's the argument.
Yeah.
He's so troubled because he has mommy issues.
And there goes our whole female audience.
And Sasuke Uchiha fans. Oh, wait!
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
I have to agree with you. It does feel long. Except I guess it's such a weird compliment. I like the fact that it felt long at the end of it, rather than Avengers 1, which to me feels long at the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it's not as bad as other films that have felt long, but it is still kind of a case of it starts to drag a little bit towards the end, as you can tell they're just trying to find a way to ramp up the stakes.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the dislikes. The other dislikes, I'll be honest, Easter eggs are nice, but what I've been noticing with a lot of these Marvel movies is that they use these Easter eggs to cover up bad writing. I mean, the cheapest example would be in Guardians of the Galaxy, where at the end, like, oh yeah, we should have taken his father. If they did not say that frickin' line, then it would have worked. But no, it's like, oh, well, we have to allude to the fact that there's a much larger universe. And that's just one thing that bothers me.
What's the one you're talking about? Because the one I'm remembering is the Howard the Duck reference.
No, this is like at the end before the credits, where the guy with the whistling death stick.
Yondu.
Oh, Yondu, yeah, okay.
Where they goes like, oh, what if we had delivered him to his father? And you're like, wait a minute, what?
Well, yeah, and I'm just like, you didn't need that line there. You could have just left it out. You didn't need it there. But no. You have to allude to a larger thing, and that was another problem I had, where they specifically worked in the inclusion of Ulysses' claw. And Vibranium's like, oh yeah, Wakanda. And I'm just like, oh, for crying out, you don't need that. You don't need that.
You don't need to hint at Phase 3. You know Phase 3's coming.
You know what, though? I do kind of like... But then again, this kind of goes into that continuity problem where, say, a Black Panther fan has, like, not seen anything, and they go into Black Panther, and we've already had the origin story for Claw. We've already had the introduction of Wakanda. And let's just assume that there's a cold start to Black Panther where all you get an introduction to is Black Panther as a character, and then Claw comes in and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and what's his name already has, the Claw. They're going to be like, wait a minute, did we just start off like this? And they're not going to realize that his origin story happened in a completely different movie.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I'm worried about with a lot of these movies going forward, is that they're going to be too interconnected to be able to stand on their own. And I'm very worried about the Black Panther film. I mean, I can understand maybe having the branding, they'll probably use that to explain the origin, like maybe when Claw stole the vibranium, he killed the previous Black Panther, which sets up T'Challa's story arc. But that's just kind of one of the dislikes I've been having with these Marvel movies, is that, I mean, yeah, Easter eggs are nice, but when you're using them as band-aids for bad writing, it's just...
I think leaving it at Wakanda would have been fine. The fact that we had to go so super in detail about it.
There were so many references in this film, you didn't need an Easter egg.
Yeah.
I'm almost getting to the point where, like, I get it. Easter eggs are kind of becoming a trope of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films.
They already are a trope. It's not even becoming. They're a trope.
3 movies in that became a trope.
Yeah, so at that point, I don't even think you need that, because you're already adding in Easter eggs within the film. They were already doing that by, what was it, Iron Man? No, the original Iron Man had references to other films. Iron Man 2 had a reference to Captain America. So at that point, it's just like, okay, we get it. You're referencing to other films. Why do you have to put something at the end of the credits when we know that's happening?
Yeah.
And also in this day and age, do you really need to put an Easter egg to something hinting at it when
we already
we
know
already
it's
know
frickin' coming?
because it was just said at Comic-Con, you know? So I can kind of get that point. It is kind of like we're trying to fill in plot holes or whatever.
Yeah, and so those are the two major dislikes. I mean, I don't really have any other like nitpicky stuff, but those are the two major things. Is it feels kind of long towards the end, and the references. Now, as for things I liked, one thing I liked was the banter between the characters, both during the party scene and just during kind of the various exchanges. I mean, my favorite is after Quicksilver kind of runs off, Hawkeye's just like, nobody would know.
Yeah.
Yes,
Nobody would know.
Also, did you guys notice?
No.
Did you guys notice that Quicksilver had the same line at the beginning and at the end?
Yes, you didn't see that coming.
Yeah, his first line was, "You didn't see that coming," and then when he died,
And
you didn't see that coming.
No, never mind, because it was to Cap that he said it the first time, and then it was Hawkeye after.
Yeah, and with
he said it to Hawkeye.
Yeah, he said it to Hawkeye because they basically trips over Hawkeye.
Oh, that's right, because the first time we
down.
saw him was Hawkeye, because he's like, my arrow didn't go off. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and with the death of Quicksilver, that's where you do see kind of some of the religious imagery there, where you just kind of got him laying there. You've almost got kind of the choral music playing as like Hawkeye also lays down. I'm just like, okay, we get it. You're trying to do something, but you're then changing your mind at the last minute. You're like not fully. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have minded the whole religious idea if they wanted to do with the whole.
Sure.
Since the main thing they mentioned was how they were like going to be like martyrs. If they actually went with it,
If they
actually went for it.
If Quicksilver had actually been made a martyr, I think that would have been great for it to come full circle, because it was him and Witch that were talking about the Avengers becoming martyrs if they died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to try back, the likes, I like the banter. I like how they at least made the interactions between the characters, and especially just seeing the stuff how they're all just kind of drunk, and so everybody takes turns lifting the hammer, and I do like how they did call back to some of the stuff they mentioned in the banter, like having Vision just pick up Thor's hammer without thinking about it, and then at the end having it be like, well he's a machine, it doesn't count,
Yeah,
right?
if you put it in an elevator and the elevator goes up,
Well,
technically
and that
it's
was kind of a constant reference. They did the Thor hammer like fairly early on. We even got to have like the little rattle from Captain America, and Thor's like, "What the crap?" And then it kept getting referenced.
Well, then there was also the case of when Tony swears just like language. Like, did Cap literally say language?
Yes.
And so stuff like that, I like. Callbacks to...
Okay, is it just me, or were they referencing the Ultimates there? Because it almost felt like they were referencing how, like, a lot of people didn't like the Ultimate Captain America for a while, because he was so what's the term I'm looking for? He was like,
a Boy Scout?
Yeah, he was a Boy Scout. He didn't want cursing. He didn't want lewd behavior.
It's
He didn't
not
want anything like that.
necessarily him in the Ultimates. In the Ultimates, he swears quite a bit. It's him in the normal comics where he's always been the Boy Scout.
Okay.
Like in the 616.
Because I almost looked at that whole thing and I'm like, are they like referencing that people didn't like that and now it's a joke? I don't get it. But I still love the idea. Especially since they had to show that, even the Mr. Serious can take a joke.
Yeah. No, I also did like talking to the hammer reference was the Quicksilver part where he's running.
Oh yeah, and he tries to grab it. Yeah. And gets thrown off. That was awesome. Because you see, like, I even missed that in the first time. The second time, I'm like, oh my gosh, is he gritty? He's like, ooh, this would be cool. Whomp!
Yeah.
So, yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. The banter was really good, especially in regards to, like, well, I'll get into that, because here's the next guideline here. So, obviously, people may not have seen, like, every film, but Avengers and Avengers 2 are a connection to each other. Roughly. And we actually, like, in a sequel, you have to see characters move forward and evolve. So, at this point, who was your favorite character that actually like did more development in this film, and why, kind of thing? And if you want to go like top two, I think that would work. Aldo, who would that be for you?
Every time I always have to say it's probably Tony Stark, because Tony Stark is one of those few characters who's always been like, I am just a human in a tin suit. And it's kind of great seeing the progression go from being super arrogant to humbled, to the PTSD, then to kind of just freaking out that he has the power to save everybody, and he takes that to an extreme. And he kind of has this very natural progression that some of the other characters probably don't have. I think it's attributed to the fact that he has the most appearances and the most movies himself. Yeah. He has his own trilogy, about
to have a quadrilogy.
Yeah.
So.
In addition to the two Avengers movies, which you could even call the Iron Man 1 and 2 part of a trilogy if you ended it with Avengers.
Yeah, you could.
But other than that, I have to say the other character that I like, who probably has the most subtle progression, is probably Thor. Having gone from very super god and almost Shakespearean to becoming more down to earth and being more joking and a lot more lax in his interactions with everybody.
Yeah, he wasn't super serious like he had been in both Thor and he'd become a little bit more acclimated to Earth.
I do like the fact that we still get those culture clashes where, like, in Thor 1, he drinks the coffee and he throws it.
Yes.
And they're talking to him about the Hulk thing, and they're like, the gates of hell scream with his enemies. And you kind of had that culture clash happen again when he's like...
Oh, wait, no, he didn't kill anybody.
No, just with his victims. And
like, mainly, like, whimpering. Lots
What,
of complaining.
how he sent them crying home to their mummies.
Visions of deltoids and green.
Like, of shattered
Huzzah.
deltoids.
Yeah.
Didn't he add, like, a huzzah at the end?
Yeah,
Like,
I think so. Yeah.
And it's just Bruce is looking at it like, nice recovery, I guess.
Yeah.
So those would be the two characters that you think evolved the most?
Yeah.
I actually think Thor is actually a really good way to bring into the Infinity Wars, because having him aware of it first makes sense.
He's your cosmic guide.
Well, yeah, that does tie into the whole, like, one of the examples of actually alluding to something that actually worked was they're like, well, somebody's been manipulating these gems, and they would probably be alluding to both Thanos, but another character they could also be alluding to would be Adam Warlock. Of, oh yeah, somebody was like strategically placing them playing this game.
Yeah.
And it would make sense because of the events of the Infinity Gauntlet. Adam Warlock is like the key person who has been trying to keep Thanos in check.
Exactly.
I also feel like the whole Thor side story is very much, Marvel going, go watch the other movies. We're telling you now, go watch them. You're gonna need to. You're gonna need to.
Well, I mean, in a lot of cases, I actually heard, like, when we did our first showing, I remember hearing people behind us when he actually said there have been 4 Infinity Gems discovered, and then they're like, where are 4?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, there are 4 now. Like, a lot of people might think that they've only seen 2. They've seen 4. So
you haven't seen Thor.
No, I haven't.
Thor 2, yeah. So one of those appears in there.
Exactly. Well, and he also wouldn't have known that he had already seen 3 because Avengers.
Yeah.
That it's not alluded to that the Tesseract is an Infinity Gem. Yeah. So at that point, I agree wholeheartedly. It does kind of push you to see these other films, and where that's a good thing. It's just like where event tie-in comics try to get you into the other books. I actually like the idea of it. So you like the evolution of Tony and Thor.
Yes.
My 2 would probably be, first of all, my favorite character in this film, Hawkeye. Bar none.
Yeah.
Because...
Barton?
Barton. Yes. Clint Barton, in fact. One of the things that I remember when the first Avengers movie came out, there was such hatred towards Hawkeye in the fact that, oh my gosh, it doesn't even look like he's got a bowstring attached, and he looks really stupid when he's aiming at something and not even looking at it. That's kind of the silliness of the character, and where I love that, people hated it. And I think this movie got people to like Hawkeye, to actually get why he's a likable character in the universe. Mm-hmm. I especially like the fact that he had a family, and that he kept it off the books of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because it's kind of alluding to the S.H.I.E.L.D. that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. always wants to show, is a S.H.I.E.L.D. that's not evil, you know?
I think that's also I think it's also really interesting they gave him a family, because in the comics he does not.
No. No, I know experiments like Young Avengers have given him a son, or alluded to him having a son. But yeah, most of the time he's been alone, or they've done subtle referencing towards romance. But mostly Clint is on his own. And I like that whole concept. And I think one of the biggest moments that sells this to me, if not the moment with his wife, it is the moment with Scarlet Witch, with Wanda, where he's literally saying, look, I get it. This is out of nowhere. This makes no sense. But dude, you gotta run with it, or you gotta go home. Because there's no turning back at that point. I think even one of the better selling points of this is at the end, where he actually kind of has to tell himself again, yeah, the island's still flying. You know?
Yeah, and it's a thing where, like, I love the fact that he pretty much, it kind of alludes to that, you know, him being a father thing. Is like, when he tells him, I have a job to do. It's not even like, I have a duty, I have a task. It's like, I have a job to do, but I cannot babysit you and do my job.
And the even better allusion to that is talking with his wife. You know, he's like, oh, these two punks.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's talking to them, and he's like, look.
Now that I think about it, that's a very father-son relationship he has with the twins.
Yeah, it really is. Especially the fact that, like, that Quicksilver won't listen to him. He's like, I will smack you. Just one shot. That's all I would need.
Nobody would know.
And that's
It's like,
probably,
last time I saw him, Ultron was sitting on him. Yeah, he'll be missed. He was a good guy.
Exactly. And it's actually the one joke I will always laugh at, is because, yeah, I'd react that way too. So it made him look very normal. And I remember a lot of people saying, you know, why is this guy even here? Because he was referenced very subtly in Thor, and then he got zero screen time aside from mind control. This shows you why Clint Barton is such an essential part of the Avengers. The second one that I would refer to is one that people might not think, and that is Scarlett Johansson. And the reason I would refer to it is I actually kind of liked the little romance subplot with her and Bruce. I thought that was really well done. And to my knowledge, you guys might be able to help me here. I know they've set her up with Tony. I know they've set her up with Steve in the comics. Have they ever set her up with Bruce?
Not
to
to my
my
knowledge.
Not to my immediate knowledge, no.
So I love the evolution that they tried to do with Scarlett's character, in that she wants to get together with Bruce, but he's still the I'm a monster. And she kind of gives the reason of, well, we both kind of are. We both are monsters. We're both misfits. We both don't belong. And I thought that was an endearing trait to her character. I think in a lot of cases they have worked really hard to endear Black Widow to the audience, which is hard to do. And I think they've done that fairly well, both with the first Avengers. If you saw the Winter Soldier, they did even better with that, because she gets outed. You know, all her dark deeds are now known. And then in Avengers: Age of Ultron, where we get to see her as a genuinely good person, whereas everybody still kind of goes off the assumption, well, she's the assassin, she's always flirting with people.
Yeah.
And you got to see that, like, she actually is having a genuine relationship with somebody, even though I also like the fact that Mark Ruffalo just didn't get it.
Yeah.
He had to have Cap go up to him and go, no, that's different. And even then, the reference, he's like, wait, you've seen her flirt before?
The up close?
So, at that point, and then I'd also like to give an honorary mention. Paul Bettany, wow, holy crap, you got given a character, and it was awesome what you did with it. I mean, holy crap. A lot of people might not have known that. Paul Bettany has been Jarvis the entire time. And the fact that they finally said, you know what, we want to take you outside of the voice booth because you are a great actor, and put you into the Vision. Oh, that was such a great idea. I think he sold the character bar none, which Vision is hard to sell. Mm-hmm. You know, he is a mindless, not mindless, but an emotionless automaton, and Paul Bettany gave a little bit of subtlety to it.
There's a nice Easter egg that they gave. At least I took it as an Easter egg. I don't know if anybody else did as well. But in the comics, him and the Vision and Scarlet Witch are married.
Yeah.
And then I think House of M happens and they get divorced.
Well, at first it was Avengers Disassembled and then House of M.
Yeah. And so point is, like, so they were married for a while, they had a relationship, and they still kind of do. Point is, when the whole island thing is falling,
Vision goes in to save
he's
Wanda.
the one that saves her, where you could have just as easily had Thor do it.
Yeah, and I kind of picked up on that too, because I figured, well, that is a key storyline, and especially if they want to keep the franchise going, then they probably would want to do Avengers Disassembled at some point.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I love the fact that they took an actor like Paul Bettany and took him out of the voice booth and let him be himself. I think he sold Vision, so I just wanted to give kind of an honorable mention to him, because a lot of people don't know he is Jarvis.
Yeah, and it's a definite step up from his appearance in Mordecai. That much I'm certain.
Yes.
I also don't... I think part of the reason why, I don't know, we love our Vision is because we didn't have a lot of time to critique him. because he kind of came in at the very tail end of everything.
Yeah.
And he was kind of awesome.
And all of his good interactions were mostly with, like, Ultron.
Yeah, so we didn't get, like, a whole lot of material for it to not be good, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I at least wanted to give that props. So for me, it's Hawkeye and Black Widow. I think they did really well in their evolution, especially with Winter Soldier attached to Black Widow. Alex, best characters of the film as far as evolving.
Well, for me, it's gonna go to Bruce Banner, the Hulk.
Bruce Banter?
Yeah.
Because that's all he ever did was banter. No, actually, he was like one of the quietest characters. I wanted more moments where he was talking.
Yes.
Although I did like the whole concept, or the one banter moment with him where Tony's getting confronted.
Yeah.
And he's like, you just roll over on your belly, don't you? Yeah, especially when I built a murder bot.
I did want more Science Bros talk.
Yeah, we really needed to have that. We needed to have the multimodal reflection sorting.
But you were saying, Alex?
Yeah, so Bruce Banner, the Hulk. I've seen the other two Hulk movies, and my memory's pretty fuzzy on them. It's been a while since I've seen them. But
You're not missing much, to be honest.
No.
But, you know...
There's a reason you blocked them out.
Yeah. This one has truly given me an insight into Hulk.
Yeah.
Plus I've never seen the original TV series or anything, but this has given me that insight into this character that I haven't seen before because I don't read the comics, and I only see these through these movies, and I liked it. I liked to see... I loved Mark Ruffalo's performance, of course, and I loved seeing how the character is conflicted with being this wild, untamable beast, except only person who can seem to kind of tame him just a bit is Scarlett Johansson's character, Black Widow.
Would you say only the beauty could tame the beast?
Yes.
Oh, I see what you did there. More Disney references.
That's better than it was. That's better than it was truly beauty that killed the beast.
Oh yeah,
King Kong. So I liked it. And of course his interactions with Tony Stark are also great.
Oh yeah.
I do have to say I think Hulk had a very, very fantastic moment. He always gets one of those, like at least that one shining moment.
Yeah.
Where he in the Hulkbuster fight, where he turns around, and he spits out the tooth.
Oh yeah.
And he kind of gives that little half smile where he's like, "Oh, you're gonna get it."
It's
And then the next scene is just the Hulkbuster trying to get away.
No. The next scene is Tony going, because he's realized what he's done, and he's like, "I'm sorry." which even sold that more.
Yes.
Especially like when he's like got that jacket where he's like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
Exactly.
Or he's going Hitmon on him.
Yes, I mean a lot of people expected that to be more of a serious fight, and I always looked at that fight when I saw in the trailers. I'm like, no, this is going to be Tony basically pleading, please stop being angry the entire time.
I also love that this was very much not a Tower of Babel type thing, where, if you guys know what that story is, it's the Batman story where he has secret information on everybody.
Yeah,
like the Justice League Doom thing as well.
Yes, yeah, that was an adaptation of it. Where it wasn't that Tony had secretly built the Hulkbuster. They referenced that very early.
No, that he helped build it.
Yeah, he's like you don't have to keep looking over your shoulder for Veronica. And he's like, I built Veronica. He's like, I know, but imagine not needing that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he called, and everybody's like, what the crap's a Veronica? And then he calls her, and you're just like, oh!
Hulkbuster! Gotcha!
Yeah. Especially like, Veronica, can you give me a hand?
Yes.
Exactly. Actually, a lot of that stuff was just awesome.
Okay, I'm a little
yes.
I'm a little embarrassed to admit this right now, but it's only now I'm getting this reference.
Oh.
Veronica. Thank you, Aldo. You've kind of spelled it out for me a little better.
Yeah. So they both co-created it.
Okay, so my second character, I have to also go with Hawkeye, because Hawkeye, again, never read the comics, so I don't know much about Hawkeye. He hasn't had his own movie. And this gives me a good insight into his personality, especially as a leader-type character, because, I mean, how easy would it be to, pair Scarlett Johansson's character with Hawkeye, but instead they put her with Bruce, and how easy would it also be to make him a Scott Summers type of character, and just make him kind of a dick, kind of a douchebag.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people have actually made the argument that Chris Evans is, and I don't know if I agree.
But they don't. They give him a true, legitimate... He has the confidence, and he's got the know-how to be the leader. He's probably not quite as the He's not like Captain America, where Captain America you think could be like the leader, but he's got a little too much of a cocky edge to him. Hawkeye is almost a little held back, a little restrained, I find.
I have to agree. I think Hawkeye feels more like a father figure. He feels like the glue to the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas Captain feels like the military leader. He feels like the head, not necessarily the
Yeah,
heart.
it's more like Cap is the brains and Hawkeye is the heart of the team.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So Hawkeye was a great character for me.
Yeah.
All right. So Bruce Banner and Hawkeye, we have 2 Hawkeyes. Romney,
Well,
who-
that'll be a 3 because,
All right.
like I mentioned early in the review, Hawkeye was given a lot more to do this time. They gave him a lot more
Yeah.
development, which better established him as why he's part of the team and why they need him there. As for a second character, though, it's a bit tricky because I can't really think of any like other characters in particular.
well, and to a lot of people who would probably come back at me and go, well, why didn't you say Captain America? Captain America doesn't need to evolve. Captain America stays genuine.
Although I did like some of the stuff they had, where like when he's creating Vision and and Cap goes to stop him, they do establish that they don't always agree on everything, which makes for a nice kind of setup for
For
what'll
Civil
happen
War.
for Civil War,
Yeah.
because it shows that they both respect each other, but they also are basically they're both equally willing to fight for what they believe in.
And
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't think Cap needed to grow in this movie per se, because I think he had enough growth in Winter Soldier itself.
yes.
And it wasn't even a growth. It was more of him assimilating to the times and essentially assimilating to S.H.I.E.L.D.
Not only that, but also setting him up as the solid good guy. You know, I will always make this argument where Captain America: The Winter Soldier did what Man of Steel couldn't do, and that was that if you were going to break a building, Cap would also be the guy who'd be holding the building up.
Yeah.
You know, and so a lot of people might make the argument that he had to grow in this film. No, he really didn't. They just had to establish he was still the same guy. And here's the thing too, like a lot of the characters, unless you've seen a lot of the side content, you haven't seen like how they've evolved and grown. I would actually dare make the argument, like with Iron Man, you have to have been able to see how he has grown through his sequence of movies. I mean, a lot of people might even be missing this. He didn't have the core anymore, which if you hadn't seen Iron Man 3, you would not know.
And there was that kind of reference to his suits now, because if you hadn't seen Iron Man 3, you don't realize like the technology that he's been working on. So in Iron Man 2, he had the suitcase armor, and at this point, all his suits are pretty much suitcase armor because of the technology he developed in 3, where he gets out of the suit and he leaves it in a sentry mode. And when he calls for it and it comes to him and he doesn't have to like ask Jarvis or anything.
Or even like the Iron Legion also being kind of part of the house party program.
Yeah, and that's all built on stuff that happened from Iron Man 3. So if you hadn't seen it, you were probably missing out on some of those references. Which, even if you hadn't seen it, that's a natural evolution of his technology. Mm-hmm. But it's still kind of nice to see the foundation that was built on.
Exactly. So let's, unless you can think of a second person, Romney.
I can't really, because I think pretty much Hawkeye was kind of the one that I really latched onto, because it's just a case of, okay, well, he was given the most development, although I did like the development, and not so much in the characters themselves, but in just kind of how they interact with each other.
Yeah. So let's go into the next question here, which is basically, we've touched on it a little bit. You know, can you just see these Avengers films without seeing the other Phase films?
No.
Definitely.
And it sounds to me like we all kind of agree. It's really difficult to, like, Avengers can lead into Avengers 2, but you are missing so much in that line that it's not worth it.
Well, if you're only watching the Avengers 2, you literally just went from like Manhattan to S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone and we're fighting.
Holy crap,
Ultron.
S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone.
Ultron is here.
Holy crap, there's a second Iron Man.
Yeah, and then you would go on to the third movie and you're like, why are we in outer space?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the bigger problems here, at least to me, in the failings of it, is would you even know who Rhodey is
Yeah.
without the Iron Man films? Would you know who Falcon is without Captain America?
You're still, I can imagine just somebody.
Like, would you know who Heimdall is without having seen the Thor?
Yeah,
movie?
exactly.
I literally just imagine somebody at the end of Avengers 2 just going like, why are there black people here now? Because we've had a fairly vanilla cast.
And you want to know what? The party scene would be the one that would throw them off. Is like, who's this character with Cap and why should I care about him?
Well, even then, you can still just assume, like, because at that point, you still don't know that S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone. You're like, oh, no, yeah, you do. He's like, oh, you probably worked with him at S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's
something to that
You
extent.
would just assume that. You were like, oh, did they replace Nick Fury?
Or also
Yeah.
that's the other thing too. Nick's not in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
How that wouldn't make sense to you because you didn't see the Winter Soldier. So at this point, I think we've pretty much kind of answered that question. I think this does encourage you to go watch the other films, but at the same time, it is also dependent on the other films because, you know, especially at the end where they kind of hint that they're going to go with an Avengers B team.
Yeah.
You just kind of sit there and go, well, why am I not going to get Iron Man anymore? Except there are these other cool characters that they've now established that would be just as awesome.
Yeah. It's just, imagine somebody who's kind of just sits in a black little room and just comes out of stasis for every Avengers movie, and they come out for new Avengers and they're like, what?
Where the heck is Loki? I thought Loki would be in this one.
I can fix him.
No, that would be the woman that walks out of cryostasis. Okay, yeah, it would also be the guy occasionally.
It could be.
Leave Loki alone!
And that's what they did. And now people are complaining.
So, I think we've pretty much all kind of given that analysis of it. The other thing that I also want to kind of approach on the matter is, you referenced to it earlier. So, Quicksilver.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I had heard was that the reason they couldn't go further with Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver was that the other Quicksilver for Days of Future Past had been cast for Apocalypse. I have not been able to confirm that whatsoever. And I do think that was one of the main problems that they would have there is the confusion.
Mm-hmm.
But I do actually kind of want to compare the characters because I have seen arguments going on both of them. Either one doesn't honor Pietro Maximoff and the other does, or the other one is way too cocky than Pietro. And I just kind of want to address this. Do you think one did better than the other?
I don't. I think they both have very excellent points.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think, because neither of them did the teenage angst, which is a big part of who Pietro Maximoff is.
Yes.
Is the whole father abandonment issues. Is a really big part of his character in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
And in neither of the movies was it really even referenced.
And you can't even tie the dad in this case.
Yeah.
I mean, you...
Like with Age of Ultron, you can't tie
no.
Magneto to it.
And in Days
Yeah,
of Future...
spoiler alert, Wanda and Pietro Maximoff are the son and daughter of Magneto.
And even in Days of Future Past, that wasn't even... It was
Nope.
slightly referenced, but not the whole abandonment thing. But as far as kind of the powers go, as far as the attitude goes, I'm actually a bigger fan of Aaron Taylor Johnson. He actually did have that kind of cocky, playful feel to him, which is something that Pietro quick in the comics does have. Is he's very cocky. The other guy didn't feel it. And I kind of just liked the Avengers version a lot more because you can tell that he had just gotten his powers and they were just kind of successful just recently.
Yeah.
So every time he used his powers for an extended amount of time, he was out of breath, which was kind of a fantastic little touch to it. And I kind of just liked how much he cared for his sister.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the very
that
beginning...
was and if people will remember, that was the one thing that I got harped on, and the one thing I was worried about with bringing those two into the mix.
Yeah.
Is they've been an item in the comics before.
But
Only in the Ultimates, though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, the cinematic universe has taken some cues from the Ultimates universe.
But
so.
to couple that, I actually thought they did really, really well with the loving twins angle.
I love it because it's one of those... You get that playful banter between them as brother and sisters where she's like,
Yes.
go do this, and he's like, I'm 12 minutes older than you.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's also that part at the very beginning when the castle's getting stormed, and you see that very slight just... you do more show rather than tell, where he, grabs her hand, and, she kind of grabs it back, and you're like, that's something a brother would do to protect his sister.
Yeah, he's
So
very protective of Wanda.
So you do get that, and that's something I really appreciated.
I will also even hand extra credit over to Aaron Taylor Johnson, because there were points where it wasn't necessarily, it felt like he was trying to protect Wanda from the world. He was also trying to protect the world from Wanda.
Yeah.
And I love that concept, because it is that for Pietro in the comics.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where, like, as much as I loved the display of power that they had in Days of Future Past,
yeah,
which is not something we necessarily got. We got like 2 glimpses of it. One with like the hammer, and the other where the bullet comes up, and he's just kind of, you see it in slow motion as he sees it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't really get that shining moment. I mean, I think maybe the train part was a really good example of
yeah.
I think
that was actually the perfect one.
Except I would say that's less of a display of his powers and more of like how to use those powers as in a real world equivalent.
I would say that was the perfect display of what he could do in the film, because a lot of people might go, well, super speed, what does that do? A lot of people might have looked at that and went, well, why didn't you get ahead of the train and like try to move it back?
Yeah.
No, it was actually a better idea for him to get ahead of the train and actually push people out of the way. Another great concept there is the fact that he tried to warn everybody to evacuate.
Yeah.
And he steps into the police station. He's like, we're under attack. You need to get out. And then he steps out. Everybody resumes what they're doing. He comes in with an AK. Brrr, move your ass!
Yeah. So I think Pietro worked a lot more as a character and as kind of a hero than he did in Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Where he was a fun character, but it really was more of a show of like, this is what you can do with his powers with modern technology. Whereas Avengers was like, here's how you can use his powers as an actual hero.
Exactly. So like, my comparison with the two would actually say, I think they both had the happy-go-luckiness to them.
Yeah.
Days of Future, especially in like the introduction of Pietro in Days, where I actually think they did that very well, where he's like bouncing from thing to thing to thing. I will say, however, that the impatience of Pietro, since he's super speed, he expects things to move at his pace. That was portrayed more in Age of Ultron.
I actually wouldn't quite agree with that, but then again, you also have the difference that in Age of Ultron, he has just received these powers.
Yeah.
Whereas in Days of Future Past, he's had
them for a while.
So that would make more sense for him.
And so in a lot of cases, I actually think at least to me, in Age of Ultron, that impatience streak is shown a little bit better than it was in Days of Future Past. It's shown in the beginning for Pietro in Days, but not near the end. Like, I still think that one moment that kind of defines the Pietro character in Days, where he's got this entire kitchen scene in front of him, and we have to slow it down and show, now he's got the ego on. Where originally, I mean, if this was Pietro from, like, say, X-Men Evolution or something like that, he would have handled it 5 seconds before that. He wouldn't have even let it evolve to where it became.
Yeah, so I can see what you're saying now, especially when they're all arguing and he just goes and rips all the cables out, and he's like...
And the perfect example of the impatience that people might be wondering is the police station scene.
Yeah.
Where he walks in, he expects them to start moving, they're not, he brings in an AK-47 and says, move your ass! Because that's the character of Quicksilver. Yeah. So I will give compliments to both of them. I think they both did fairly well in their portrayal of Pietro Maximoff. And therefore I can't compare the two. I think they were two completely different performances and did good with what they were trying to do with it. Alex, what are your comparisons between the two? Because you've seen Days of Future Past, as well as this Quicksilver, and you haven't read the comics, so you don't know the history.
It's hard for me because even at first I didn't even realize it was the same character from Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
And I think you've pretty much already said it all. I don't think there's much more I can honestly add to what Pietro's differences are between this and Days of Future Past. It is a different portrayal, and both of them are really well performed by their respective actors, and whatever happens in the future, I'll be interested to see more of Pietro.
Okay. Romney, do you have anything to add on this one? Or?
Not really, because I'm kind of with you where they're pretty much two separate characters. I kind of liked the one from Days of Future Past a little bit more, but that may just be more attributed to just kind of more of the moments. But it was it's not like one was bad and one was good. They were both really well done, really well written characters. It's just, I don't know, a lot of it's just more, I liked kind of the scenes they had in Future Past where he's like going around slow-mo and how it looks to him.
Yeah.
But I also liked how in Age of Ultron where they're arguing, he just goes and rips off all the cables while they're talking. He just goes,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that scene where he's like, "Oh yeah, you guys can sit there and argue. I don't care."
Yeah, the kind of the thing I liked about this one was, I mean, because in Days of Future Past we got a lot of that slow motion, how he sees the world. In this one, we didn't get a whole lot of that, but I did like how they showed his power in, like, I guess normal speed, where it was like those trails. You would see like the blue trails kind of all those flows. And so as far as like as a trade off, I don't think we got that.
Whereas Days of Future Past decided to just blur him.
Yeah.
I actually like that idea because that's how the comics portrayed it too, as a trail.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of nice, a nice touch, a nice comic book touch. But I do have to say, as far as powers go, Days of Future Past was a better show.
Okay. Yeah, I would kind of agree with that because the kitchen scene it really defines Pietro.
Yeah.
So let's actually go into the final question here, which is I brought this up in Turtles. I'm going to bring it up here. Obviously, movie tickets, they cost a lot these days. And so it's really hard to justify going to see all these movies. And therefore, one of the scales that I kind of want to put for us as a way to distinguish from the usual rating scale is how much you would actually pay to see this film. And so we're going to start with Aldo, and you can put in, like, you know, go Redbox it or whatever. How much would you recommend to a friend or to a family member to spend for Avengers Age of Ultron?
I would say if you're kind of a casual fan of the Avengers movie, this is definitely a Friday night ticket price. If you're a diehard fan, I mean, go for it. Go for the IMAX.
Go 3D, yeah.
I don't know.
Go for the full experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say 3D. I'd say go IMAX if there's a non-3D showing, because I haven't seen the 3D, so I don't know how well it looks. I would imagine that with all the flair that this one had, like such as Pietro's trails, Wanda's power, and all these things, I imagine it looks really cool in 3D, but I couldn't honestly say so. But I am one of those diehard fans, and I will probably make some time to go to a third viewing and see it in IMAX 3D. Yeah, that's just me, but I'd say this is definitely worth a full ticket price, even for a casual fan.
Yeah, I'd actually kind of go your angle too. Like, I'm not usually the guy to sit there and be an advocate of 3D or IMAX screening experience. Alex, he kind of attests to this. I'm kind of a cheapo when it comes to stuff like this. I go for matinee showings. I do all that stuff, but. And even for the original Avengers, I would not say go full price on it. This one I would. Like, we actually said in our review, I would go the full IMAX, full 3D, and like one of our theaters actually does the D-box where the seats move.
I kind of want to go see it in D-box.
I would do all of it.
Yeah.
And that is a lot coming from me, because that's like a $25 ticket right there. So I would want the full experience with Age of Ultron. I think that would be perfect for me. I also would like expand on it. I almost want like a Lord of the Rings appendices kind of thing for the Avengers films. I want to know everything that went into them. That's just me though. Alex, how much would you spend on Avengers Age of Ultron?
Okay. If you have been definitely up on all your Marvel films thus far, absolutely go the full 3D IMAX D-box experience. Whether it be all three, whether it be just one or two of them. Just, you can go all the way.
If you are combination of all three.
If you are...
People are literally sitting there going, are you calling us dickbags or something? No, D-box is like moving seats. Like vibration.
Okay. Yeah. Now, if you are maybe like me, you've seen a handful of the Marvel movies, and you've seen both Avengers movies, go, I say, full matinee, full price, matinee, whatever, full Friday night tickets.
$7-8, maybe $10 at the most.
Yes. Now, if you have only seen maybe like Iron Man and the first Avengers, then either matinee this or rental, Netflix, Redbox, whatever.
Yeah, because it's going to hit those mediums. Romney,
well,
how much would you pay for this movie?
I guess this is going to kind of make me a bit of the stick in the mud.
Uh-oh.
Because, to be honest, as someone who has been following the Marvel movies, but I wouldn't consider myself a diehard fan, I'm not going to say specific. I'll just put a specific number amount. I wouldn't pay more than $8 to see it
Okay.
for
Yeah.
a single ticket. That's just kind of where I would put it. I wouldn't pay more than $8 to see it.
Which would be like a
'Cause-
Friday night ticket.
Yeah, like Friday night, 2D, no IMAX. That basically, because I'm not a big fan of stuff like IMAX and 3D because I've seen too many films that don't really make full use of it.
Sure.
And so, yeah, that's kind of where I would put is that if you're like me who, has seen them all, but you're not really that into it, but you've got, like, say, kids or friends who are pestering you wanting to see it, don't pay more than $8 per ticket.
Yep. So that is, I believe that's going to wrap it up for us. This is the review of Age of Ultron, the second Avengers film. We are all excited for it. Go see it, guys. It is a good popcorn flick. It will keep your kids entertained. And also, the other thing I wanted to point out is hands off to James Spader. Holy crap, he did really well with this role. I was actually going to ask you guys, can I ask Alex, did you guys notice they gave him teeth?
Yeah.
Just because I almost wondered if James Spader actually did the mocap.
I'd assume
He did. One of the funny kind of behind the scenes things they said is that he would wear like a helmet that had two like styrofoam red balls above him so the actors
to approximate the height.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to approximate his eyes, the Ultron eyes, and apparently one of the big jokes going on because he gave some really great performances. Elizabeth Olsen would always get like super into the scene. And Aaron Taylor Johnson would just yell off camera, "Look at his big red balls!"
I want to see this now. That's like Martin Freeman constantly flipping off the camera
Yes.
in the Hobbit sets. That is awesome.
Yeah. So apparently that was the thing. So yeah, that was him. That's kind of why those scenes actually looked really well done.
Which would make
because
sense because they really do match his inflection
Yeah.
with the fact that Ultron has teeth and he's a robot. He doesn't have to have teeth.
And every time I think about it, I kind of go back to it. I always thought it was a little weird that his metal was moving rather than moving pieces. It kind of felt
where it was actually like facial gestures.
It felt a little weird, but you got used to it.
And also like hands off to Andy Serkis. This is like the first. I have not seen his Australian or his New Zealand work, but it was so great to see him not motion capping. He was actually in a role, and it's like, dude, you look dirty, but it was great to see on
It
camera.
was so great.
So, I mean, he may have just sold my ticket to the Black Panther just because I want to see more Andy Serkis not in mocap.
Yeah.
Even though we'll probably get his arm. But
Well, that and given that Claus in the comics is the master of sound, that'll probably be some mocap stuff.
Yeah.
But I was just so happy we got him outside of it. You know, he actually got to act.
I loved, and it was such a small part, but I loved his whole cuttlefish story.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
great. Especially because it's kind of also like a subtle nudge to Wanda's like your manipulation is not going to affect me.
Well,
the only way you're going to do it is if you do this.
Well, apart from that, it also just goes to show that these are brand new people. They just barely got their powers. They're barely getting involved in these superhuman things. It's definitely a great show that even amongst all these chaos, he's still going like, you may have super speed, you may have superpower, but you're new. You don't know how to deal with somebody like me.
The best way to explain it is like the Solid Snake Meryl moment. You know, you still have the safety on the trigger, newbie.
Yeah.
So that's going to go ahead and do it for this review of Avengers Age of Ultron. We do still have plenty more to film, so don't worry, guys. This is not the only section you're going to get tonight. But again, no episode. And we've got plenty more in store because we've got some PS4 games to play.
And we have a few things to wrap up.
Wrap up.
Korea, we're coming for you, son!
No, I wasn't meaning that, and plus the camera's not on. I was meaning, it makes sense if you watched the last episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions.
Oh, yes. We'll see you next time.